Brigand Oaxaca is crude. It's an inescapable first impression. Half the time I saved, the game would force itself into an irreversible windowed mode. Half the time I restarted, it would undo my audio settings. And half the time I opened my quest log, it would force me to read it twice due to its bizarre formatting. Yet, all the time, it compelled me to persist. Because under that low poly face only a mother could love, this 2017 indie is a deep 50-hour RPG that more than justifies its rough exterior. Brigand Oaxaca gets away with a lot by being the brainchild of one individual, but even if you're unwilling to extend the grace of grading it on a solo dev curve, you do benefit from just how singular and uncompromised it is in its vision. It is a playable rejection of the modern RPG trend toward simplification. With every input, you can feel it shaking its fist in the air at Oblivion and Skyrim for abandoning Morrowind's glorious real-time stat-dependent dice roll combat. I would bet anything that a deep dive on the developer would yield decades-old scathing forum posts condemning Bethesda for consoleizing the Elder Scrolls. Play this game and tell me I'm wrong. Because Brigand Oaxaca's most consistent philosophy is a separation of your skill from your character's skill, an attribute common in RPGs, but one I don't think I've seen quite as intently from the first-person perspective since all that time I spent failing to hit mud crabs. Even the PC gameriest of immersive sims don't fight you quite as hard for trying to perform the basic task of aiming. Not only do your stats govern how quickly your cursor narrows in when pointed, but also how quickly it will recover when you move, and how quickly it will prepare itself after switching weapons and reloading. But there's even more antagonists to your aiming outside of stats. One of the most common ailments an enemy will inflict on you will confuse you and bob your aim back and forth. The heaviest of enemies will quake the ground to throw your shots off balance, and one time I got a headache in the forest because of a mosquito bite that made me miss a vital shot. All that's to say, how well you move your cursor means nothing, and there are entire systems built up here to ensure you'll never circumvent the intentional limitations your character must face. The true skills being tested aren't dexterity, but character building and ammo conservation. I don't want to be weird or gatekeepy over whether or not this is an immersive sim. It certainly contains a lot of those qualities, but the Steam store page tags have it right by placing the CRPG tag first. Sure, it's an open world where you can approach situations in multiple ways, but they're often married explicitly to your stats rather than any intuitive problem-solving skills. You're not going to be stacking your boxes to climb into vents or rummaging through drawers in this one, and even fragile wooden crates will specifically demand a melee weapon to be smashed regardless of how many point-blank shotgun blasts you greet it with. That's why I'm leaning into that Morrowind comparison so heavily, because the philosophies that guide Oaxaca's open world and the way you navigate through it are very similar, down to the rough edges that other games would have smoothed away. Oaxaca revels in its jankiness. Shit is an official item tier within the game, and you can't even assign spells to hotkeys. You have to open up your spellbook mid-combat. But when I call it crude, I don't mean so solely as a pejorative. It manages to embrace that crudeness and lean into it. It views the uncanny valley as this beautiful paradise to be enjoyed, rather than a pit to be escaped. Keep that in mind, because if you've ever bounced off of a game for being too clunky or old, this one might not be to your tastes. Not unlike its muse, Brigand Oaxaca opens with your awakening as a prisoner. Doesn't take long to realize you're in the game's namesake, because southern Mexico is all that's left of the country after the capital was ground zero for a nuclear apocalypse. Your first real conflict after breaking free is picking a side in post-apocalypse Oaxaca's literal banana republic, the foreign muscle and their puppets controlling the plantation, or the local revolutionaries. Don't expect the latter to provide comparable financial reward. If you're loyal, you can be let in on their magic customs and make use of all the lowest statues floating around the landscape. But with every dollar you fire out of your muzzle, you'll find yourself further inclined to side with radical self-interest. And that might be one of my favorite parts about Brigand Oaxaca. The fact that money, or jank as it's known after the war, is a primary resource in being successful. Both because it's vital to buy the ammo and healing items you desperately need to survive, but also because it's so hard to come by. There's no inventory junk to keep track of because the game doesn't allow it. A small 10-slot backpack will force you to think diligently about what you're actually bringing with you out into the world, and that becomes an increasing concern when you realize there's no way to sell anything. Nobody wants to buy the crap you stuffed into your pockets, and the result is a deflated economy that will demand intentionality from you with every jink you spend. You want to put some points into hardware and maintain the dinky weapons you have for as long as you can. Good replacements will be expensive. It's not too dissimilar to the first Witcher, in that the end result is a game that's not about the combat but the ways in which you prepare for combat. It's a game of long-term resource management and skill distribution, where a quest to explore a cave isn't just a change of scenery but a meaningful challenge and descent through the unknown. It asks a lot of you, even on its wimpy difficulty setting. But if you're willing to meet it where it begs you to, it will reward you. It's hard, but it's exhilarating, and I think what keeps it from just being self-filleting difficulty porn is that despite all the oppressive systems that keep your character poor and frail, there are a few working in your favor. None more important than a world that persistently tracks enemy health and death. Once you bring someone to 0 HP, they're gone. They're not coming back. That gorge with rabid dogs just outside the plantation, you can take a couple well-equipped trips there and permanently remove that infestation. Do some saving back at town in between each pack to reduce the risk. Sure, it's a little cheesy, but the game both demands and rewards it. Because Brigand Oaxaca's world may be hostile, it may suppress how much you can reasonably earn, and it may make you want to pull your hair out every now and again, but it's also a world that's consistent and conquerable. You can slowly make hostile areas non-hostile and deeply explore without risk. You can open up some fast travel points beholden to your stats that let you navigate easier. You can find powerful and permanent upgrades out in the world that you can integrate into your build and playstyle. It's all earned, and with every feather on your cap you'll get more experience that makes each excursion that much easier. You will feel that extra 5 points in agility, trust me. It's that satisfaction of taming this post-apocalypse where Oaxaca went from a cute novelty to a worthy RPG, one that doesn't just emulate aspects of the greats from the 90s but embraces them wholly, for better or worse. You've got cities and towns and sewage systems to explore. The square footage of this adventure is both wide and deep, owed in no small part to an aesthetic that doesn't demand high-quality textures. But that mileage is filled with characters, quests, and minor factions that will move your character ever closer to being able to survive the dangers to come. There's this indiscernible vibe to the game. Its aesthetic, even its menus. It has this way of making you feel alien, which makes it all the more enticing when you do finally beat the challenges it puts in front of you. But not all of those challenges are created equally. I think it's important to distinguish that I recommend you play Brigand Oaxaca. I'm not sure I recommend you beat it, because its jankiness and its aesthetic aren't its downsides. The true vice in a game that seems to proudly wear an elegance on its sleeve is a final act that totally jumps the shark, both in and out of universe. I should have known something was fishy when I was forced to pick a side in a faction conflict in the first few minutes. It wasn't a condemnation of fence-sitting, it was actually a mask to disguise the real faction choices at play. The introduction of a third and fourth party after a pseudo-climax that changed the game for the worse. Here's my advice. The second you start fighting cyber ninjas, just pretend you rolled credits. I wish I did. Because somewhere around Act 7 of 10, Brigand Oaxaca is less of a game than it is a digital middle finger from the developer. Sequences where save points are sparse, enemies are dense, corners are tight, and instant death is an inevitability are the norm for the game's closing hours. And though there are some upgrades out in the world that help mitigate that struggle, there are none that make it fun. This journey through a temple is a bit closer to Simon Says than it is any game with shock in its name. It has an exaggerated version of the Prey 2017 problem, in that a massively combat-heavy second half ends up stifling a lot of builds and robbing the game of the choice that the first half was so pregnant with. In many ways, this is the point. You'll find no attempts to hide how difficult this game is within its description, and it's difficulty that I was fully embracing for the majority of its runtime. The same ideals that made it so intense and deliberate end up just making it frustrating and obtuse when the thumb is pressed too hard on that scale. But before the game gets to that point, it's something special. No game will be for everyone, and Brigand Oaxaca will be for less than most. It proudly plants its flag and doesn't care if you don't like how it waves. But all that's to say that Brigand Oaxaca is still good, maybe even great. It's just that you need to know what it is before you try it. It certainly knows itself. It knows that it's a fun, sprawling, challenging open-world RPG. It knows that providing a clear level of arbitration between you and your character can lead to the best role-playing opportunities. It knows it's got a unique world with compelling choice and exploration incentives. It knows it goes a bit too overboard as it approaches its climax, and I'm certain it knows that it's crude.